But for now, let's take you to this. In a significant shake-up of South Africa's political landscape, Build One South Africa, Rise Mzansi, and the Good Party officially merge to form a new unified centrist political entity. The strategic alliance aims to present a formidable challenge to the existing political order driven by widespread public dissatisfaction with service delivery, persisting unemployment and governance failures across the nation. The newly formed party is poised to capture the attention of voters seeking a fresh alternative, positioning itself as a bold centrist force ready to tackle South Africa's pressing issues. The merger comes after weeks of speculations and discussions culminating in a decisive move that could reshape the country's political future ahead of upcoming elections. Now, for more on this, we're joined by political analyst, Prof Dirk Kotze. Prof Kotze, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. Unite for Change is the special purpose vehicle party launched by the three parties today. Now, they don't cease to exist as political parties. They'll continue to exist in their individual identities in Parliament as the Good Party, Rise Mzansi, as well as Build One South Africa, BOSA for short. But what they do here is that they merge their resources and their bases to form this special purpose vehicle party to contest specifically in the local government elections next year. While the party doesn't have a president, it has a leadership council consisting of the three leaders of the party and a national management committee consisting of the three leaders of the party plus their chairpersons, bringing on board Brett Herron of the Good Party, Vuyiswa Ramakopa of Rise Mzansi, as well as Nobuntu Hlazo Webster of Build One South Africa. What are your thoughts around this type of merger, which is a semi-merger, which forms a new party but doesn't dissolve the existing parties? It's the first of its kind we've truly seen in South Africa. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, good afternoon. It's actually not the first time that this is happening. The forerunner of the DA, the Democratic Party, was exactly the same. And there's some other components of it also. So there is a precedent for this. And I think what you are referring to is actually the result of the constitutional situation as well as the Electoral Act. And that is that parties cannot merge after an election and not lose their seats in the national parliament as well as in the provincial legislatures. So it means that there are going to be two identities that are running concurrently. On the one hand, the three parties will continue in parliament, national parliament, and in the provincial legislatures under their original names. But for local government purposes, they have now established a new party. And in 2029, the existing three parties will have to dissolve, and they will stand also in the name of the new party, United for Change, in the national and provincial elections. But that is not their choice. They have to manage this as a result of the electoral system and the electoral dispensation and legislation that exists. So it's going to be tricky for them. And I think this is part of the challenge for them also, that there's only a year left. If they've done it a bit earlier on, they would have had more time in order to prepare for this local government election. But they have very little time. And therefore, it's going to be a major challenge for them, starting with, for example, how to nominate candidates. Because amongst the three, they will have now to nominate one candidate per ward, for example. And the processes for nomination, we know it's highly contested nowadays. And to have the support of the structures of all three parties in order to agree on three together in one, for example, for the nomination process, I think is going to be their first major test. Not so much the leadership structures. I think that will be easier. They know each other very well from being together in parliament. They come from more or less the same political spectrum. The same as that of the DA and the Patriotic Alliance and Action SA. So there is a convergence that has taken place already, but it is about really the practical side of managing these, the three on the one hand and the one on the other hand.
The nomination of candidates is an interesting part that could present the contestation you talk about there. Let's go back to how Rise Mzansi, for instance, nominated its members of parliament that was on the list it submitted to the National Assembly before the election, of course. They used an external panel, so to speak, which comprised of academics, business leaders, as well as activists who are not necessarily members of the party, but assisted the party as external voices to be able to test the integrity of the candidates that the party will field. And ultimately, they said to the party, these are all the people we interviewed that were presented to us as potential candidates, and these are the people we think are formidable candidates that can stand for the values that you espouse for as a party in parliament. And this is our recommendation. And the party went ahead and took the recommendation of this external body, and those were the people they fielded on the list to parliament as their members of the National Assembly. Could the Unite for Change special purpose vehicle employ a similar strategy in their nominations of character, to use an external professional body, so to speak, to help them process, vet, and elect members for to stand as candidates?
Yes, it's interesting that you refer to that. I think this is definitely a model or that can be used. The idea of having selection committees is now very well established. The DA started with it. The ANC took it over also. They have their electoral committee, chaired by Kgalema Motlanthe. And as you say, Mzansi had this. So I think it's emerging as a model that's been used by quite a number of parties, whether it's external or internal, that's where the difference is. But I think the fact that they would like to, most possibly like to avoid that there's contestation about the procedure itself. Who's going to sit on a panel? I think the idea of an external panel or independent panel might be a way forward for this particular coming election. In future, they might decide differently. But it will be interesting to see, because they also promised the South African audience or public in general that there might be more parties. So if there's 4 or 5 parties, ultimately, it will obviously complicate the process more. And to be inclusive in terms of representatives of those parties sitting on these different structures will be a challenge. So to have an external element to act on behalf, but without necessarily having the final say on it, I think that might be a way to go.
Yeah, just want to go back to perhaps what I spoke about at the start of it, that the party doesn't necessarily have a president, which is what I refer to as the first of its kind in South Africa. It's the first time we'll have a party that exists that doesn't have a single presidential candidate, so to speak, or a single president leading the party as the overall leader of the party. Here we have a troika of leaders, which is what they call their leadership council. Which will serve as the ultimate decision-making body of the party, which is Musi Mamani, Patricia de Lille, and Songezo. They will have to employ a collective decision-making process in order to take a position for the party. Do you see that to be the type of structure that engenders a politics of trust amongst the voters of the different parties who might want to throw their weight behind the special purpose vehicle?
Yes, incidentally, it's not the first time that we have this type of structure. The old Democratic Party had the same, also 3 leaders that were there, but not for very long. I think this is not something which is sustainable for a long period. It's something that normally works only for a transitional period. Other parties in other parts of the world have something similar. It's not very general in nature, that it's used by many parties, but it is one way of doing it. And it's especially in parties where they emphasize collective leadership, and as they have indicated, especially Musi Maimane, but the others also, that they want to de-emphasize the personality cult almost of leadership, political leadership in South Africa. So that will contribute to that. But at the same time, you can't get away from it, that personal leaders do play a role. They are very prominent. They become, in a sense, the personification of a party. And if you don't have that, you can go back to a party like, for example, Azasku, where they had one president, but it was frequent circulation. Very often new persons in the position of president. So they couldn't develop that collective identity or that identity, which is also associated with the party, which is simply part of the South African political culture. We can't get away from that. So I think this is, again, is going to be something which they have to manage because they can't move away from it until 2029, when the existing three parties will have to dissolve and merge finally, and only then it really will be possible to appoint a one leader or one president for such a group.
Yeah, and just a last question. Now, these parties have been in conversation since the conclusion of the 2024 national elections. But what we saw here is that the early conversations included Herman Mashaba, who ultimately is not a part of what had resulted. Now, Herman Mashaba had opted to not participate with Action SA in the formation of this new party or in the coalition process, or which is a consolidated coalition process of these parties. Herman Mashaba has chosen to go on his own, and in fact, the Sunday Times reports now that Herman claims that Lindiwe Mazibuko, former parliamentary leader of the Democratic Alliance, had approached him with the offer to stand as candidate for the party, mayoral candidate in the city of Johannesburg, and he ultimately rejected that. Lindiwe Mazibuko says, well, that never actually happened. This guy's lying. But ultimately here, Herman Mashaba has already started announcing candidates, mayoral candidates for his party, and he says if they can't find someone charismatic enough in the city of Johannesburg to stand, he will stand himself. Do you think there's still an opportunity between now and next year for Herman Mashaba to reconsider his position in joining this consolidation?
It's a difficult question because Action SA is very unpredictable about their decisions on matters like this. I think ultimately it's unlikely that he will join this group. He wants to be a leader in his own right with his own party. And we've seen it, and the way in which he was in and out of coalitions or groups that work together, I think makes it very difficult for his partners in order to know where they always stand with respect to Action SA. So I think it is for the sake even of forming this group, it might be better if he's not necessarily involved in it now. The same to some extent applies to the Patriotic Alliance, because remember, the Good Party is part of this group. Most of them are members of the Government of National Unity also. But there is inevitably going to be internal or amongst them going to be competition. For example, between the Good Party and the Patriotic Alliance, definitely there's going to be competition for very specific sectors of the electorate. And I think this is, on the one hand, it is possible, but at this moment, it's unlikely that parties that see them, that they have or have the potential to grow in their own right. And I think both parties, Action SA and Patriotic Alliance, believe that they will then become part of a bigger group.
Yeah. Prof Dirk Kotze, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Prof Dirk Kotze, political analyst, talking to us there, giving us his insights and analysis on the formation of Unite for Change, a consolidated merger between the Good Party, Mzansi, as well as Build One South Africa.